My name is Erin Harlow and I'm 29 years old. 5 days ago, I sat across from a lawyer in a stiff chair, read one single piece of paper, and started laughing. And not a polite little chuckle. Not an awkward giggle. I mean full-on, shoulder-shaking, can't catch my breath laughing, the kind that makes strangers uncomfortable. The attorney slowly set his pen down on the table, folded his hands, and asked me in a very calm voice if I'd like a glass of water. I told him no. I told him I was fine. And honestly, for the first time in 2 years, I actually was. My parents hadn't spoken to me in almost 2 years. No birthday texts. No holiday cards. Not even one of those forwarded emails that older relatives send when they don't know how to say they're thinking about you. Just total silence. And then, out of nowhere, a law firm sent me one document, one single page, asking for my signature. They needed me to sign away my rights to my grandfather's lake cabin out on Blue Ridge Cove. The only place on this earth that ever truly felt like home to me. That document was supposed to take something away from me. Instead, it handed me the one thing my family never gave me on their own, proof that somebody had already decided I was worth protecting. Long before any of this blew up. But before I tell you what was actually inside that envelope, if this story is connecting with you right now, go ahead and hit subscribe. Promise this gets so much better. Drop your city and local time in the comments too. I genuinely love knowing where people are listening from. Okay, let me take you back. All the way back to the family dinner that ended everything. I grew up in a small town just outside Asheville, North Carolina. Kind of town where everybody knows what car you drive, what church you go to, and roughly what your daddy brings home every week. My father, Warren Harlow, was the branch manager at Piedmont Trust Bank. Firm handshake. Pressed shirt to church every Sunday. The kind of man other men called a straight shooter, which in that town meant he was respected, not necessarily kind. My mother, Patricia, ran the women's ministry at our church and organized the Harvest Market fundraiser every October like clockwork. Together they looked like a stock photo of Southern respectability. Perfect family on the outside. And then there was my little sister, Becca. 3 years younger than me. And somehow always 3 steps ahead in my parents' eyes. Becca got ballet lessons from age 6. I got told maybe next year, which became a permanent maybe. Becca got a nearly new Jeep Cherokee the week she turned 16. I got a bus schedule and a gentle suggestion to look into babysitting the neighbors' kids. Becca got the bedroom with the bay window and the walk-in closet because she needed space to store her stuff. I shared a wall with the utility room and learned to fall asleep to the sound of the washing machine. I want to be really clear, I'm not telling you this for pity. I'm telling you because it matters. 'Cause without understanding this, none of what comes later makes sense. My parents never screamed at me. They were never cruel in ways you could easily point to and say, look, right there, that was wrong. They just divided things differently. Like I was a line on a budget they could quietly cut and nobody would notice the numbers were off. My father had a line he used every time I brought it up. He'd set down his fork, look at me like I was being overly sensitive, and say, Becca needs more help, Erin. You're the tough one. That's a compliment. I believed him for way longer than I should have. I wore tough like a badge of honor. I picked up weekend shifts at a diner all through high school. Paid for my own senior trip. Filled out my own college aid forms without a single parent sitting at the table beside me. Took me years to understand what tough actually meant in my father's vocabulary. Didn't mean strong. It meant she won't make a fuss. It meant she doesn't cost us anything. It meant we don't have to try with her. I was the first person in my family to finish a 4-year college degree. Business administration from UNC Asheville while working 22 hours a week at a payroll office downtown. 4 years. No help. No safety net. Just me and a 5:30 a.m. alarm going off 6 days a week. My parents said they'd come to graduation. My mother picked out the blouse she was going to wear. My father asked what time the parking lots opened up. I saved 4 seats in the family section, one for my mom, one for my dad, one for Becca, and one for my grandfather, Ray Harlow, the one person in my entire family who never once made me feel like a burden. The morning of graduation, my phone rang at 6:45. My father. Calm. Casual. Like he was calling to push back a dentist appointment. Hey, something came up. Your sister's moving her furniture into the new apartment today and she really needs some help. I stood in my dorm room in the blouse I'd ironed twice. I could hear my mother in the background asking Warren where the packing tape was. It's just a ceremony, my mom called out. You already did the hard part, sweetheart. I walked across that graduation stage alone. Sat in a row of strangers' families. Took my own photo using the timer on my phone, propped against a concrete planter outside the auditorium. That afternoon, my phone rang again. But this time, it was Grandpa Ray. I'm real proud of you, Aaron, he said. His voice did that thing it always did when he was trying not to cry, went rough around the edges like gravel. And don't you worry. I already handled it. I figured he meant a card in the mail. Maybe a check tucked inside a plain envelope. I didn't push him on it. I said thank you and I meant every word of it because with Grandpa Ray I always meant it. I wouldn't understand what he meant by I already handled it for another 5 years. My grandfather passed away the following year when I was 24. He went quietly the way he did most things, without any fuss, without burdening anyone. I was holding his hand when it happened. I drove home from the hospital alone and sat in the parking lot of a gas station for 20 minutes before I could make myself pull back onto the road. After the funeral, while we were going through his things, I found an envelope in his old tackle box. Yellowed paper. Taped shut with masking tape. His handwriting on the front in those big steady letters he used when he was writing something meant to last. For Aaron. Even when it's time. I thought it was a goodbye letter. The sentimental kind. Kind that would completely undo me. So I kept it sealed. I kept it close. You know how you hold on to something you're not ready for? That's what that envelope was. For 5 years, every time I saw it, I'd touch the corner and put it back down. I met Jake Owens 2 years after Grandpa Ray passed, when I was 26. He was doing renovation work on the building where I'd just started as a junior coordinator at a property management company. I heard him before I saw him, singing something by Zac Brown Band under his breath while measuring a doorframe on the 3rd floor. Key but completely committed. Not a single drop of self-consciousness. Jake ran a one-man contracting business out of a used pickup truck with a magnetic sign on the door that read Owens and Company. General Contractors. He worked long days. His hands were rough, his work boots had seen better days, and on our second date he showed up with gas station flowers because, as he put it, the grocery store was sold out and he wasn't showing up to pick me up empty-handed. I loved him for that. We got married when I was 27. Small ceremony at the Riverside Gardens venue just outside town. I felt Grandpa Ray's absence at every good thing that happened in my life by then, like a familiar ache that never fully went away. He would have loved Jake. I know he would have. My parents came to the wedding. They stayed for dinner, drank the wine, smiled in the photos. But the week after, at a family dinner at their house, my father sat at the head of the table and said it so casually you'd almost miss it if you weren't paying attention. I thought you'd aim a little higher, Aaron. I figured you for someone who'd end up with a professional. My mother pressed her lips together. Becca scrolled through her phone without looking up. Jake was quiet the entire drive home. Jaw tight. Eyes straight ahead on the road. Then he said, I don't need your dad to respect me, Aaron. But he owes you an apology. I wanted to cut contact that same night. Part of me was already done. But Grandpa Ray hadn't been gone that long, and something stubborn in me kept thinking he'd want me to keep trying. To keep showing up. To be the tough one just a little longer. So I stayed. Not forever. But a little longer. It happened at Thanksgiving. That same year. Just a few months after the wedding. 20 people packed into my parents' house on Sycamore Drive. Kind of gathering where the kitchen never fully clears out and somebody is always topping off a sweet tea that nobody asked for. Becca pulled me aside near the back hallway, just past the laundry room. She needed $8,000. This was the third time she'd made this ask. The first two, she called them loans, though no paperwork existed and not 1 cent had ever come back, were still floating somewhere in the world, unaccounted for. This time it was for inventory for a boutique clothing store she was opening in the River Arts District. An Instagram-ready concept with a mood board and a name she'd already trademarked. I said no. Gently. Clearly. No. She walked back into the living room with red-rimmed eyes and a shaking chin. My father was out of his recliner before she'd even sat back down. What kind of sister says no when her own family needs her? He said it loud enough for the whole room to catch it. My Aunt Connie froze with a ladle in her hand. My cousin Deja looked at me with wide eyes. My mother leaned over to my Aunt Ruth and said, barely dropping her voice, "She's been different since she married that man. I've been worried about her, honestly." 20 people in that room. Not one opened their mouth. I stood in the middle of all of it and felt something I hadn't felt since graduation day. Invisible. Completely surrounded and completely alone at the same time. I found my coat by the front door. I bent down and kissed Deja's baby girl on top of her head. Jake was already standing at the door with his keys, holding it open without saying a word. And I walked out of that house for what turned out to be the last time. This story is hitting close to home right now. I want you to pause for just 1 second. Hit that like button before you keep scrolling. Takes 2 seconds, and it honestly helps more people going through the same thing find stories like this one. Okay, let's keep going because what happens next changes absolutely everything. Silence is a strange thing. You'd think no contact would feel like relief. 2 years without the guilt trips, without the holiday landmines, without sitting through dinners where you're the only one who notices the whole dynamic but everyone acts like things are perfectly fine. You'd think it would feel good. But silence isn't empty. Fills up fast with whatever other people pour into it. Within a month of that Thanksgiving, my parents had already built a story. Warren started making calls. Patricia worked her circle at church and through the women's ministry. The story was tight and clean. Erin is struggling. She's not herself. Jake is controlling her. We're worried. My cousin Deja called me in January, voice careful. "Hey, I heard you've been seeing a therapist? Your mom mentioned it. Are you okay?" I had never told anyone I was in therapy. 'Cause I wasn't. My mother had made that up completely and was passing it around like a dish at a church potluck. Something warm to share. Something that made people feel sorry for her while quietly making me look broken. Got worse. My father called my old supervisor from college, a woman who had given me a reference 3 separate times, just to check in on me. In a town that small, a call like that isn't concern. It's a smear campaign with a polite bow on top. Deja told me later that my father had described me to a relative as possibly a danger to herself. Those were his exact words. The bank branch manager, the firm handshake guy, the straight shooter. He used mental health language as a weapon against his own daughter because she said no to $8,000 and walked out of a Thanksgiving dinner. Calls stopped one by one. Aunts I used to hear from at Easter. Cousins who used to text on my birthday. A family friend who had known me since I was 7 years old. They all went quiet, like someone had sent a signal and everyone tuned to the same channel. By spring, the only people from my old world who still reached out regularly were Deja and my Aunt Connie, the one with the ladle, who sent me a private message one afternoon saying she was sorry and that she'd explain it all someday. Jake and I moved 35 miles east to a small town called Weston Grove. Far enough that I didn't have to worry about running into my father at the hardware store on a Saturday. Close enough that I could get back if I ever really needed to. I got promoted to operations manager at work. Jake's business grew. He brought on 2 workers, then a third, picked up a commercial account with a property developer downtown. We bought a house with a front porch, a backyard, and a kitchen window that caught the morning light just right. It was a quiet life, a genuinely good one. But every Thanksgiving, every birthday that slipped by without a single message, I'd pick up my phone and hover over contacts I hadn't been able to bring myself to delete. No one ever called. Jake never pushed me to talk about it. He'd just be there, on the couch, some game on low, his hand resting on the back of my neck. One night I asked him, "Do you think I handled it wrong?" He didn't even hesitate. "You handled it like someone who'd already given more than anyone had the right to ask for." I drove past Blue Ridge Cove once, past the turnoff to Grandpa Ray's lake cabin on Timber Creek Road. The dock was starting to sag. Paint on the shutters had faded to almost nothing. I slowed down but didn't turn in. Everything about that place was him. The smell of pine and lake water. The way the screen door smacked shut in the summer heat. The Saturday mornings he'd let me steer the little aluminum fishing boat even though I always pulled left, and he'd gently straighten us out without making me feel bad about it. I kept driving. Then on a Wednesday afternoon in February, an envelope showed up in my mailbox. Law firm return address. Holbrook and Associates, Asheville. My name typed on the front label. Aaron Harlow. Neat. Official. Like a bill you weren't expecting. That envelope sat on my kitchen counter for 3 full days. I know how that sounds, just open it. But if you've ever cut off your family and then gotten an unexpected letter from a lawyer, you know exactly that feeling. That slow, cold drop in your stomach. Your brain immediately starts running through the worst-case scenarios. Picked it up and put it back down at least a dozen times over those 3 days. I finally opened it on a Saturday morning while Jake was out on a job. Coffee still warm. House totally quiet. Just me and the sound of the neighbor's dog barking at something in the yard. The letter was from a Mr. Theodore Holbrook, attorney at law. 1 page. Clean. It said that Warren Harlow was in the process of selling a residential property at 22 Timber Creek Road, Grandpa Ray's cabin, and that as a possible heir to the estate of Raymond Harlow, I was being asked to sign a quitclaim deed. That's a legal form that wipes out any claim you have to a piece of property. Signature line at the bottom. My name typed under a blank. 30-day deadline. I read it 3 times. Almost 2 years of nothing. Not a birthday text. Not a single word. And the first contact my family makes is through a law firm, asking me to hand over the last thing Grandpa Ray ever touched. I set the letter on the kitchen table and looked across the room at the little wooden shelf Jake had built above the fireplace. On it sat Grandpa Ray's old tackle box. Cedar wood and brass hinges. His initials burned into the lid, RH, in that slightly uneven way that said he'd done it himself. He'd left that tackle box to me specifically, one of the few things listed in the note he gave his lawyer before he passed. Still smelled like lake water. And then I thought about the envelope. The one I'd been keeping for 5 years. The one still tucked down at the bottom of that tackle box, right where I'd found it the day we cleared out his things. Yellowed paper. Taped shut. For Aaron. When it's time. I went and got the tackle box off the shelf. I sat at the kitchen table. And I opened my grandfather's envelope for the first time. My hand stayed steady right up until I broke the seal. Inside were 2 things. The first was a legal document on heavy paper, stamped and notarized. The top line read, Irrevocable Trust Declaration, Raymond H. Harlow Family Trust. Below that, in plain language, it explained that the cabin at 22 Timber Creek Road had been placed into a trust during Raymond Harlow's lifetime. Person in charge of managing the trust was listed as a Mr. Donald Ferris, my grandfather's personal attorney. The sole person named to benefit from that trust was listed on page 3. Aaron Marie Harlow. The second item was a single sheet of notebook paper, folded in half twice. His handwriting, slow and deliberate, the way he always wrote when something really mattered. Aaron, I know how your daddy thinks. He loves you in his way, but he doesn't see you right when it comes to your sister. This cabin has always been yours. I'm just making it official on paper. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. Grandpa Ray. I slid off the chair and sat down on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet. And I cried. Not the kind of crying that breaks you open. The other kind. Kind that puts something cracked back together. Kind that feels like finally exhaling after holding your breath for years without even knowing you were doing it. He knew. Before I ever walked out of that Thanksgiving dinner. Before I ever stopped answering my father's calls. Before any of this. Grandpa Ray had already seen it all clearly, and he didn't just feel bad about it. He did something. Something quiet. Something real. Something that would still be standing 5 years after he was gone. Jake came home and found me sitting on the floor with the papers spread out around me. He sat right down next to me. Didn't say a word. Just put his hand on my shoulder and let me breathe. In the morning, I called Donald Ferris. He answered on the second ring. Calm voice. Unhurried. Trust is valid and filed on record with the county, he told me. Never been challenged. Your father's name does not appear in the document at all. The cabin was transferred into the trust 3 years before your grandfather passed away, which means it never became part of his estate when he died. It never went through probate. As far as the law is concerned, that cabin has been yours from the day Raymond Harlow signed those papers. I thanked him. Then I called Holbrook's office. The receptionist had the tone of someone who'd already decided whose side she was on. Are you calling to return the signed deed, Ms. Harlow? Not quite, I said. I'd like to meet with Mr. Holbrook directly. I have a few questions before I sign anything. A pause. Keyboard clicking. He's available next Thursday at 10. Thursday works, I said. I called Ferris back and asked him to put together certified copies of everything. The trust papers, the county filing, the list of who the cabin belongs to, all the official stamps. I want everything tight and organized, I told him. Nothing left to chance. He said it would all be ready by Wednesday. Then I asked, would you be reachable by phone if I need you during the meeting? He didn't hesitate. Absolutely. I spent the next 5 days getting ready. Not emotionally, I was way past that. I prepared the way I do before a financial audit at work. Papers in a clear order, facts in a straight line, nothing left open to guesswork. I read the trust papers front to back 4 separate times. I pulled the county land records online and checked the dates against everything Ferris had told me. Cabin had been moved into the trust 3 years before Grandpa Ray died. That meant Warren never legally owned it. He just assumed he did. And Grandpa Ray had let him keep that assumption, quietly, patiently, for reasons that were becoming clearer to me by the hour. The night before the meeting, Deja called. She opened with, I need to tell you something, which never starts an easy conversation. Your dad's been making calls, she said. Not just to family. To people at his bank. To someone he knows at the county planning office. He's really stressed out, Aaron. More stressed than I've ever seen him. Becca's boutique, it's going under. I'd already guessed that much. The store's social media account had been mostly quiet for months, posting with the low-energy feel of something that's trying to look more alive than it actually is. 6 months ago, Deja continued, your dad took out a home equity loan on the house. Your parents' house on Sycamore. And he co-signed Becca's business loans on top of that. The boutique couldn't keep up with rent and inventory costs. Now the loans are coming due and your dad is personally responsible for all of it. How much? I asked. From what Aunt Ruth said, somewhere around $220,000. I sat down on the porch steps. The night was warm for February. Crickets going. Jake washing up dishes inside, the kitchen window lights spilling out into the yard. He found a buyer for the cabin, Deja said. $350,000. Enough to pay off most of what he owes and keep the boutique going for a few more months. And the only thing standing between him and closing that sale is your signature. I let that sink in. He's been telling everybody you'll sign, Deja said quietly. Like it's already a done deal. He said, and these were his exact words, Aaron. She has no real connection to that property. She'll sign once she understands the situation. And Becca's been saying it too. That you always come through when the pressure is on. That you always fold eventually. I stared at the dark tree line at the edge of our yard. Thanks for telling me, Deja. What are you going to do? I'm going to that meeting. Thursday came. I put Donald Ferris's card in the front of my folder. Behind it, the certified trust papers, the county filing receipt, the beneficiary page, and Grandpa Ray's handwritten note tucked inside a clear plastic sleeve so nothing would smear or smudge. I set the tackle box on the passenger seat for the drive. I don't fully know why. Maybe for comfort. Maybe because it felt like having a witness. The drive back into Asheville was muscle memory. My hands knew the exits before my eyes caught the road signs. I passed the Food Lion where Grandpa Ray used to buy me chocolate ice cream bars on Friday afternoons after swim practice. I passed the middle school where I won the regional spelling bee in 6th grade and sat through the whole awards ceremony without a single family member in the audience, because Becca had a dance showcase that same afternoon and everyone went there instead. I didn't need GPS. The town remembered me, even when the people in it had decided not to. Holbrook and Associates was on the 3rd floor of a building on Lexington Avenue. The waiting area had that quiet, carpeted feel of a place where hard things get resolved on paper. The receptionist gave me a quick look over when I said my name. Have a seat, Miss Harlow. Mr. Holbrook will be right with you. I sat down. Checked my folder one more time. Trust papers certified. County receipt. Ferris's direct number circled in pen on the back of his card. Grandpa Ray's letter in its clear sleeve. Everything in place. My heart was steady. I had spent 2 years being called unstable by people who couldn't keep a retail business running for 18 months. I could handle a conference room. The door opened. Miss Harlow. Holbrook was in his mid-50s, silver at the temples, polished in the way that comes from years of managing other people's most difficult moments. He held the conference room door open and gestured me in. I walked in, and there was my father, Warren Harlow, sitting at the far end of the table in a freshly pressed blazer, hands folded in front of him like he was opening a board meeting. He looked up when I walked in. Same jaw. Same posture. Same way of settling into a room like he'd already assessed it and decided he owned it. Aaron! His voice was warm. Carefully warm. Concerned dad tone, pitched just low enough to sound genuine. Sit down. Let's get this wrapped up and get you back to your day. I stopped just inside the door. I was told this meeting was between me and your office, I said to Holbrook. Holbrook adjusted his tie. Mr. Harlow asked to be present. I thought it might help move things along. Move things along. I turned that phrase over in my head the way you turn something over in your hand when you're trying to figure out what exactly it is. I sat down across from my father, set my bag beside me, put my folder on the table and kept it closed for now. Warren leaned forward with his elbows on the table. Look, I know things have been rocky between us. But this isn't about all that. This is about the property. Your grandfather would have wanted this taken care of properly. He used Grandpa Ray's name. The one person who had ever fully stood in my corner. He used that name to try to move me out of this room. That's when I knew exactly how this meeting was going to go. Holbrook slid the quitclaim deed across the table toward me. I picked it up and read it. Every single word. Every line. The room was quiet except for my father's index finger tapping a slow rhythm on the table. A nervous habit he probably didn't even know he had. I set the document down. You haven't asked how I'm doing, I said. Warren blinked. What? Almost 2 years of silence. And the first contact you make is through a law firm. My voice stayed flat. Not angry. Just clear. You didn't call. You didn't write. You sent a legal notice. We tried reaching out, Aaron. My phone number hasn't changed. Holbrook cleared his throat quietly. Warren ignored him. I'm not here to go through all of that, my father said. I'm here to handle a piece of property. That's all. Let's be adults. And if I don't sign? The tapping stopped. My father's jaw tightened, the way it always did when a number didn't work out the way he planned. Then this drags out and costs everyone more time and money. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Don't make this harder. From the same man who stood up at Thanksgiving and publicly told the whole room I had a problem. The man who called my old supervisor out of nowhere. The man who had people whispering about my mental health all over town for 2 full years. Don't make this harder. Before I do anything, I said, I'd like to know why I got a lawyer's letter instead of a phone call. Warren glanced at Holbrook briefly, the look of a man checking to see if his support is still in the room, then back at me. We haven't been able to reach you, he said, to the air more than to me. She cut off the whole family almost 2 years ago. No explanation given. No explanation, I said quietly. Aaron has been going through a really difficult time, he continued, voice dropping to sound sad. Her husband has had a lot of influence over her decisions. We've been concerned about her. Same script. Word for word. Not a single line changed. Holbrook was writing on his legal pad. I couldn't see what. I looked at my father and held his eyes. Let him finish everything he had to say. Then I said quietly, Are you done? Something shifted in his face. The warmth didn't leave, it froze. Like a projector catching on a frame. Then his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen and held up one finger. He answered. The room was small enough and the phone speaker loud enough that I didn't need to strain. Becca's voice came through thin and pointed. Did she sign yet, Dad? I need to know before Monday. My supplier is going to cancel the whole order if I can't confirm the deposit. Warren hunched over the phone, trying to muffle it with his hand. I'm working on it. Just give me a little more time. Just tell her it's for the family, Becca said. She always folds when you say that. Those words landed in the center of that conference room like a glass dropped on a hardwood floor. Warren pulled the phone away and ended the call. His neck had gone red from the collar up. Holbrook was studying the grain of his legal pad like he'd never seen it before. I folded my hands on the table. She always folds when you say that, I said. Quietly. Word for word. No emotion in it. She's under a lot of stress, Warren said. Don't read into it. I'm not reading into it, I said. I'm just listening. Holbrook's pen had gone still. He still hadn't looked up from the pad. This was the entire plan my father had come in with. Slide the paper across the table, say the magic words about family, wait for Aaron to sign, and be home by noon. Instead, he was sitting in a conference room where his daughter had just said, out loud in front of a professional witness, exactly what the machine looked like from the inside. Push the lever. Watch Aaron fold. I didn't fold. Warren stood up hard enough that the chair scraped the floor. Aaron, I've been more than patient with you. He pointed at the quitclaim deed. That cabin hasn't meant anything to you in years. You've never even been there. This is the sensible thing to do. You're right, I said. I haven't been there. Because the last time I was at a family event, you stood up and told a room full of people I had a problem because I said no to giving my sister $8,000. That was a misunderstanding. I was there, I said. 3 words. I let them sit in the air. He pressed both palms flat on the table. You hold on to grudges. Always have. That's the real issue, Aaron. Holbrook raised one hand. Let's try to keep this. If you don't sign this, my father said, his voice dropping to the flat, controlled tone he used when denying loan applications, I'll take this to court. A judge can sort it out. I looked at Holbrook. Can he actually do that? Holbrook shifted in his seat. There are legal avenues, but it's not a simple process. Okay, I said. Both men stopped. I reached into my bag, pulled out my folder, and opened it. I slid the top page across the table with both hands, settled in front of them with a soft sound. Before we go any further, I said, I need both of you to look at this. The heading across the top was impossible to miss. Irrevocable Trust Declaration, Raymond H. Harlow Family Trust. This is a trust document, I said. It was filed with the county 8 years ago by Raymond Harlow. Places the property at 22 Timber Creek Road into a permanent trust. Names me, Aaron Harlow, as the one and only person who benefits from that trust. Person managing the trust is Donald Ferris, my grandfather's attorney. I have the certified copy, the county stamp, and the full supporting paperwork. I pushed all 7 pages to the center of the table. The silence that came after had actual physical weight. My father didn't touch the papers. His eyes moved from the document to my face and back, like he was waiting for one of them to make sense of the other. Holbrook reached for the documents right away. He read the first page. Flipped to the second. Read that. Flipped to the third. Then he set his glasses down on the table, pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of his nose, and set the papers down very carefully, the way you set something down when you're afraid of what happens if you're not careful. He looked at Warren. I've sat through enough hard meetings, audits, tough client calls, performance reviews, to recognize the exact moment when the ground under a conversation shifts completely. Holbrook didn't gasp. He didn't curse. He just looked at my father the way a doctor looks at an X-ray when what they see is worse than what they were expecting. And Warren, who had been leaning on that table with both palms flat, went completely still. Mr. Harlow, Holbrook said. The way he said that name had changed. Were you aware that your father set up a trust for this property? Warren's mouth opened. Closed. The cabin was part of his estate. It passed to me after he died, through the normal process. Holbrook turned to the county filing page and read the date out loud. Then he looked back at my father. According to this document, the property was transferred into the trust 3 years before your father passed. If that's accurate, and the county stamp indicates it is, the cabin would not have been part of your father's estate when he died. That can't be right. I'd recommend verifying this directly with the county clerk, Holbrook said, weighing every single word now. But this copy appears properly executed and notarized. Ms. Harlow, do you have the trustee's contact information? I handed him Ferris's card. Holbrook put the call on speaker. 2 rings. Then Ferris's voice, calm, steady, the voice of a man who had been expecting this exact call for a long time. Holbrook introduced himself, named the property, and asked directly, Mr. Ferris, can you confirm the existence of a trust created by Raymond Harlow covering 22 Timber Creek Road? I can, Ferris said. I drafted it myself. Trust was executed and filed with the county 8 years ago. Raymond Harlow transferred the cabin into the trust while he was still alive. Aaron Harlow is the only named beneficiary. The property was never part of Raymond Harlow's estate, and it did not go through probate when he passed. Is the trust currently active and unchallenged? Holbrook asked. Active, unchallenged, and I am the current trustee. Holbrook thanked him and ended the call. Then he turned to Warren. Mr. Harlow, I need to stop this meeting. Quitclaim deed I prepared does not apply here. Ms. Harlow has no interest to sign away because the property was never part of your father's estate to begin with. Warren shook his head slowly. That cabin is my family's property. I grew up there. My father and I built that dock with our own hands. I hear you, Holbrook said. But legally, as of 8 years ago, it belongs to the trust. And the only person who benefits from that trust is your daughter. He paused. I also need to mention, if you've represented to the buyer that you hold clear legal title to this property, that creates a separate problem for you. Warren shoved back from the table. The chair legs scraped hard on the floor. You planned this. His voice had gone tight, somewhere between accusation and fear. You've been sitting on this for years just waiting to use it. I didn't plan anything, I said. I didn't even know what was in that envelope until your lawyer sent me a letter. You called me into this room, Dad. The word landed differently than I expected. Dad. I hadn't said it in almost 2 years. It hit the air between us heavier than either of us was ready for. Warren pressed the heels of both hands against his eyes. When he pulled them away, he looked different. Not just tired. Smaller. Like someone had pulled one loose thread and the whole thing was coming undone. Aaron, you don't understand what's at stake here, he said. His voice cracked down the center. If this sale falls through, the loans, the boutique, Patricia and I took out a loan against the Sycamore house. We could actually lose it. Our home. I heard that. I want to be straight with you about that. Part of me, the part that spent 18 years trying to earn his attention, wanted to reach across that table and say, let's figure something out together. But I stayed exactly where I was. You borrowed against your house for Becca's store, I said. You co-signed her business loans. You put everything on the line for her. And through all of that, through every single one of those decisions, you never once picked up the phone to ask how I was doing. His mouth moved, but nothing came out. And now you want me to sign away the one thing Grandpa Ray left me, to clean up a mess I had no part in making. He would have wanted us to be a family, my father said. Barely a whisper. Then he would have wanted you to be a father to both of your daughters, I said. The room held completely still. Holbrook gathered his legal pad and stood up with the quiet efficiency of a man who needed to exit a room without setting anything off. I think we should end this meeting. Mr. Harlow, I'd suggest speaking with a trust attorney about your options. Miss Harlow, you're free to go. I closed my folder. Collected my papers. The unsigned quitclaim deed stayed in the middle of the table like a check that had bounced. My father was still in his chair, hands flat on the wood, staring at the surface like the answer might be buried somewhere inside it. Aaron! Just the one word. No strategy in it. Just a man in a conference room who had run completely out of moves. I stopped at the door. You know my number, I said. It hasn't changed. I walked out through the waiting area, past the receptionist, down the stairs, and out onto Lexington Avenue. I sat in my car with the engine off for about 10 minutes, hands on the steering wheel. Not feeling like I'd won something. Just feeling tired. Kind of tired that 2 years of no contact doesn't cure, it just holds in place until you can deal with it. But the meeting wasn't the end of it. Not even close. That evening, Deja called again. That careful tone she uses when she's trying not to alarm you but needs to tell you something alarming. Your dad drove out to the cabin after the meeting. Your mom and Becca went with him. They're inside. I was still in the blouse I'd worn to Holbrook's office. Jake looked up from across the kitchen. They can't sell it, I said. They can't transfer it. They have zero legal standing. I know. But your dad told your mom it's the family cabin and no piece of paper is going to change what it means to them. Those were his exact words. I set the phone on the counter and stared at the ceiling. Then I called Ferris. He picked up right away. They have no legal authority over that property whatsoever, he said before I'd even finished explaining. They cannot sell it, rent it, or put any kind of claim on it. If they refuse to leave, I send a formal written demand. If they ignore that, we file a trespass complaint. I don't want my father arrested at my grandfather's cabin, I said. Then let's hope he makes the smarter choice, Ferris said. The law is completely against him here. At some point that becomes something even he can't ignore. Jake was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching me. He's a numbers guy, he said. The math is going to beat the pride eventually. I really wanted to believe that. That Saturday morning I woke up to a text from Deja with a screenshot. Becca had posted on her social media. The front porch of the cabin, Patricia in a cardigan holding a coffee mug, Warren standing behind her with his arms folded, gazing out at the water. Caption: grateful for this place and these people. Some things are worth holding on to. I stared at that photo for a long time. In the corner of the frame was a green Adirondack chair. The one Grandpa Ray had built himself the summer I turned 9. I helped sand it down. He let me put on the first coat of paint, said I had the steadier hand of the two of us. It was the last place he sat in the mornings, before his knees got too sore to make the walk down to the dock easily. Becca was sitting in it like it was a prop. Comments rolled in. Relatives: so good to see you all together. A neighbor: that place holds so many memories. My cousin Derek, who hadn't said a word to me in over a year, wrote, Warren built that place up with his own hands. His family's home. He hadn't built a single thing on that property. But he'd been told a version of the story long enough that the version had become his truth. I didn't respond. I put the phone face down on the nightstand. Jake brought me coffee. Ferris sent the demand letter Monday morning. Certified mail. Stated clearly that the people currently in the cabin had no legal right to be there, that the property was held in a permanent trust, and that they had 72 hours to leave. Becca's post came down Sunday night. 41 hours into the 72, my phone rang at 6:52 in the morning. My mother. I almost didn't answer. But there's a reflex that doesn't care how many months have gone by. You can go 22 months without speaking to someone, and the second their name lights up your screen, every wall you've built has to work twice as hard to hold. So I answered. Erin! Her voice was raw. Whether she'd been actually crying or had just practiced sounding like it, with my mother I could never fully tell. Please. Your father hasn't slept at all. Becca is going to lose everything. You're tearing this whole family apart. I sat on the edge of the bed. Jake was awake beside me, not moving, just quiet. This didn't start 4 days ago, Mom, I said. I know we weren't perfect. You told people I needed professional help. You made that story up and handed it out to everyone we knew. That wasn't being imperfect. That was a decision you made. A long breath. Then, you've changed, Erin. I don't even recognize you anymore. Good, I said. I hope so. She hung up first. She always ended a conversation she couldn't steer by being the one to cut it off. Jake looked at me. You okay? She said I've changed, I told him. He was quiet for a second. Then, about time somebody noticed. They left the cabin Monday afternoon. 58 hours in, just under the deadline. Ferris's office had gotten through to Holbrook, who had apparently called Warren one final time and told him plainly, leave voluntarily or face a formal legal complaint, and given the trust documentation you will not win this. Warren packed the car. Patricia collected the dishes she'd brought from home. Becca took a full tote bag of groceries she'd stocked the fridge with, like she'd been planning to stay through the whole season. They drove away from that cabin the same way they'd operated in my life for years. Without a word to me. Without looking back. Without once sitting with the fact that the cabin had never been theirs to walk into. I waited a full week before I went. When I finally drove out to Timber Creek Road, it was a Thursday morning in early March. That North Carolina spring sky that can't make up its mind, gray and heavy, sitting low over the water. The lake was flat and still. The dock creaked a little under my feet when I walked out onto it. The front door had been left unlocked. Inside, the cabin smelled like pine and old blankets. Patricia had wiped the kitchen counters before she left. I'll give her that. Cushions on the couch were straightened. On the kitchen table, Warren had left a single key and a small note on a torn piece of lined paper. His handwriting smaller than I remembered. This was never just about the money. Dad. I read it twice. Folded it up. Slipped it into my coat pocket. I didn't know if it was true. I didn't know if he knew whether it was true. I didn't know yet if it was ever going to matter. I walked down to the dock and sat in Grandpa Ray's green Adirondack chair. The one I sanded. The one I put the first coat of paint on. The chair that had been used as a backdrop in a social media photo 4 days ago and now just belonged to the morning. I sat in it and looked out at the water. A great blue heron crossed the cove low and slow, moving like it had nowhere urgent to be and no reason to rush. For the first time in 2 years, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. If you're still with me, and I really hope you are, I want you to take 10 seconds right now and share this story with one person. Just one. Someone who felt invisible inside their own family. Someone who kept being called the tough one while getting the least. This story is for them. Okay. Let's finish it. The money caught up with Warren the way it always does, quietly at first, then all at once. Without the cabin sale, the $350,000 he'd been counting on was gone. The buyer walked. Becca's boutique couldn't cover another month's rent. By May, she'd shut the doors and sold off all the inventory to a company from Charlotte at about 35 cents on the dollar. Warren's personal guarantee on the loans came due. He sold his truck, a GMC Sierra he'd had for 9 years, and pulled money out of his retirement account early, which came with a tax penalty he hadn't planned for. Between the two, he managed to cover most of the debt. Not all of it. And not without serious damage to what he'd been working toward for decades. Retirement, which Warren had planned for 63, got pushed back. Probably to 68. Maybe further. In a town that size, none of this stayed quiet for long. Stories moved through church parking lots and grocery store aisles just the way they always have, and the questions started circulating. Did Warren really not know about the trust his own father set up? Did Raymond actually leave everything to Aaron? And that daughter, the one he'd been telling everyone was struggling, she had the paperwork the whole time? Warren stopped going to his Thursday morning Rotary breakfasts, started using the side entrance at the bank, ate his lunch alone with his office door shut. Deja told me all of this a little at a time, not because I asked her to dig it up, because she figured I had a right to know how the story I'd been pushed out of was ending. I listened. I never once called my father to say I told you so. There is nothing satisfying about watching a parent get smaller. There's just the truth and the quiet that settles in behind it. Becca took a job as an assistant manager at a home goods store in a nearby town. Real work. Steady paycheck. A long way from boutique owner, the title she'd had printed on her business cards for 2 years, but honest. She went quiet on social media entirely. Patricia pulled back from almost everything she'd been involved in. Stopped running the harvest market. Stopped hosting her weekly Sunday brunches at the downtown cafe where she'd held court every week for years. Deja told me why. People keep asking about you. How's Erin? Have you heard from her? Is she doing okay? And your mom doesn't have a good answer anymore. The story my mother had been telling. The worried, devoted parent, suffering quietly while her troubled daughter stayed away, had started cracking. Trust papers were public record. The timeline didn't lie. And in a small town, when the facts start moving faster than the story, the person telling the story loses the room. I didn't feel good about any of it. I want to be honest. I didn't want my mother embarrassed in the frozen food aisle. I just wanted the story she'd been telling about me to finally stop. Then, for weeks after the boutique closed, I got a text. From Becca. I know you probably don't want to hear from me right now. I'm sorry for what I said on that call. I'm sorry for a lot of things. I'm not asking you for anything. I just needed to say it. I read it 3 times, sitting out on the dock with my feet hanging over the water. I didn't write back right away. I sat with it. I didn't delete it either. A week later, Deja mentioned, just casually, not like she was passing along a message, that Warren had asked about me. Didn't ask Deja to say anything to me. Just quietly asked if I was doing okay. I let that sit too. The extended family came back piece by piece. Not everyone. Not all at the same time. But enough. Aunt Connie, the one who'd been holding the ladle, the one who'd looked at the floor during Thanksgiving and said nothing, called me on a Tuesday afternoon in April. She got to the point fast. I saw exactly what was going on in that room, she said. And I stood there and said nothing. I have been carrying that for almost 2 years, Aaron, and I am truly sorry. You deserved more than my silence. I thanked her. And I meant it all the way through. I didn't pretend it erased what happened, and she didn't ask me to. 2 cousins texted within the same week. Derek, the one who'd commented on Becca's social post, never reached out. My Uncle Harold never called. Some people had settled into a version of events for long enough that shifting felt like more work than they were willing to do. I didn't chase any of them. I didn't send a family group email laying out every fact and date with a subject line that said "for the record." I just kept living. Jake and I started working on the cabin in April. Not a big overhaul, more like a conversation with the place, listening to what it needed and answering it. New stain on the dock boards. Fresh caulking around the windows. The bathroom faucet that had been slowly dripping since I was 12 finally got a new part and went quiet. Jake replaced the electrical panel. It was dangerously out of date. He ran new wiring through the kitchen, put in proper grounded outlets throughout, and installed a porch light that actually came on when you flipped the switch. "It's literally what I do," he said, grinning, covered in dust from the attic. I found Grandpa Ray's tools in the small workshop off the side of the garage. Hung on a pegboard he'd built and mounted himself, each tool in its own spot. Hand saws, chisels by size, hand planes wrapped and oiled. A half-finished birdhouse sat on the workbench like he'd stepped out for a break and just never found his way back to it. In a storage bin underneath the workbench, I found a stack of old photographs. Me at age 7 on the dock, holding a largemouth bass that was nearly as long as my whole arm. Grandpa Ray crouched behind me, both hands raised, laughing, hat pushed back, flannel sleeves rolled to his elbows. Pure, simple joy of a man watching someone he loves do something great. I held that photo for a long time. He didn't leave me a lake cabin. He left me proof that I mattered. Not as the tough one. Not as the one who handles things on her own. Not as the daughter who didn't need much. As Erin, his granddaughter. Worth putting things down on paper. Worth protecting long before protection was ever needed. I framed that photo and hung it on the kitchen wall above the window where the afternoon light comes in warm and gold every day. Every single time I look at it, I hear his voice on the phone the afternoon of my graduation. "Don't worry. I already handled it." A month after the meeting at Holbrook's office, I sat at the kitchen table in the cabin and wrote a letter by hand. Not through a lawyer. Not through Deja as a go-between. Just me, a pen, and a sheet of paper. I wrote it to Warren and Patricia. I'm not writing this to settle a score. I'm writing it to be straight with you, which is something I should have done more of years ago and something you should have done more of too. Cabin stays in the trust. That was Grandpa Ray's choice, made freely years before any of this started. I'm going to honor it. There's a version of our relationship that can be rebuilt. It doesn't start with legal documents. It starts with honesty. Starts with you seeing me the way he did. Not as the tough one, not as the one who handles it, not as the daughter who doesn't need anything. As your daughter. My door is open. But it opens toward honesty. If you can walk through it that way, I'll be here. I stamped the envelope and walked it out to the mailbox at the end of Timber Creek Road on a Thursday evening, the sun already going down behind the ridge, the lake going dark and still. I didn't stand there waiting. I walked back to the dock, sat down in Grandpa Ray's chair, and listened to the frogs start up as the last of the light faded. Jake read the letter before I sealed it. didn't suggest changing a single word. Just nodded slowly and said, "Yeah, that's you." I used to think of boundaries the way most people think of them, like walls you throw up when you've been hurt to keep people from getting back in. Closed off. Defensive. I don't think that anymore. Boundaries are doors. You get to choose who has a key. You get to decide what knocking looks like. And if someone shows up with clean hands and an honest voice, you open it, not because they're owed it, but because you choose to. But you don't leave the door propped open for people who only show up when they need something from you. That's not love. That's just access. And I spent way too many years confusing the two. It's a Thursday evening in late spring. I'm sitting on the dock in Grandpa Ray's green Adirondack chair. The one I sanded when I was 9. The one I painted the first coat on. The one that showed up in a social media post a few months ago and now just belongs to the quiet. The wood is warm from the afternoon sun. The lake is flat and still. Across the cove, something breaks the surface. A fish, a frog, something alive out there. And the ripple moves out in slow, patient circles that just keep going long after the splash is gone. Jake is inside making coffee. I can hear the kettle through the open window. The porch light he installed a couple weeks ago clicks on automatically as the sky starts to dim. He set it up that way without me asking. I've got Grandpa Ray's old fishing rod in my hands. The one with the cork grip he rewrapped himself. The reel that makes a solid, satisfying click when you cast. I've been out here for over an hour without a single bite, and I honestly do not care one bit. I talk to him sometimes. Not out loud. Just inside my head, the way you keep talking to people who've left the room but haven't really left. "Hey, Grandpa. I found the envelope. I found the trust papers. I found your letter. I found everything." A pause. The wind moves across the surface of the water. "Thank you." I look down at my hands. They're rough now. From sanding and painting and hauling lumber and opening envelopes I was scared to open. Not the hands of someone who was ever handled gently. The hands of someone who built what she has, one decision, one day, one choice at a time. My name is Erin Harlow. I'm 29 years old. Almost 2 years ago, a law firm sent me one piece of paper asking for my signature. That paper didn't give me anything I didn't already have. Just reminded me that someone had already decided I was worth protecting, quietly, officially, years before I ever needed it. And sometimes that's the whole thing. Not a big dramatic moment. Not a public acknowledgement. Just one person who saw you clearly, did something real about it, and trusted you to find it when the time finally came. If you made it all the way here, thank you. That genuinely means a lot to me. This story isn't about getting even. It isn't about proving anything to people who were never going to believe me anyway. It's about knowing you deserve to be seen even when the people who were supposed to really look at you kept looking right through you. So before you go, I want to ask you something. And I really want you to answer this one in the comments. Is there someone in your life, right now, who makes you feel the way Erin felt? Like the one who handles everything but gets the least? Like the one who's called tough because it's easier than actually showing up for you? Drop it in the comments. Tell me your story. I read every single one and you deserve to be heard. And if this story moved you, if any part of it felt personal, please share it right now. Send it to someone who needs it. Post it. Text them the link. Costs you nothing and it could mean everything to the right person. If you aren't subscribed yet, hit that button right now. Then hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. I put real heart into every story on this channel and I want you there for it. And if this one got to you, if you felt it, go ahead and tap that like button before you close out. Takes 2 seconds and it genuinely helps more people find their way here. I'll see you in the next one.